Good morning, everybody. As soon as we have one more, we'll get started. Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. We'll get started. I'm here, Councilmember Moreno's here, Councilmember Green is here. We have a quorum. Councilmember Moreno moves for approval of the Budget Committee meeting minutes of April 2nd, 2024, which Councilmember Green seconds. Hearing no opposition, those are all approved. I'm going to jump out of order for 1 second because this probably will not last very long. We did the meeting. Go to the audit. Becky, are you here? Yeah, will you come forward and just give us a quick update on where we stand on the audit, and then we'll go back to the regular order of the agenda. Good morning.
Good morning. So happy to report to you that we started interim procedures for planning and preliminary work in December and January, which was something that we were not able to do the year before. So we got a good jump start on a lot of the things that we are required to do. And then we currently are out in the field. We've received a large amount of information from finance, and I would say we're about a month ahead of where we were last year, which also means that we should have no issues with being able to issue the report by the June 30th deadline this year, barring anything unforeseen, obviously, but we are positioned well and have a ton of information in order to work through. So the outlook looks really, really good. It's the best position that we've been in since we've been engaged as your auditor.
Right. Any questions from the council? I mean, I guess we just know how important this is, and
absolutely,
obviously, I guess we just want to make sure we're on time and with the bond sale, having the capper completed, I think is extraordinarily important.
Absolutely. And it is our goal as well. We take pride in our work and we want to be able to issue on time without extension. So, it's a mutual goal and one that, I am seeing everyone involved in the process is working hard towards. So I appreciate the, uh, the extra communication. We're communicating well and getting the information that we need. And so I think it's going really well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, seeing no questions, we'll move on to the civil service plan amendments. And members, what we'll do is we'll listen to Mr. Hagman about all of these. Unless somebody has an express concern, we'll vote in globo on items A through M as one motion rather than individually. Mr. Hagman? Thank you, Becky.
Good morning. The first item is 3A. It is a rule change, that would, right now, the threshold for the use of annual leave is based on 26 weeks. The rule change would allow, annual leave to be taken and, it's going to reduce it to 8 weeks. As you know, annual leave is for personal use, and this rule was driven by individual basically who needed a personal day, and of course, and the rule wasn't available for the person to utilize their leave. 3B is a new classification of emergency medical technician recruit. It would be at 35,673. Right now, basically, not only do you have to grow talent, you have to develop it, and basically this new job classification would provide a start and opportunity for individuals who wish to begin a career in EMS. Item 3C is an adjustment in the job classification of field operations supervisor, which is presently exempt to it, and it would become a non-exempt position of mosquito control operations and maintenance supervisor. The salary would be reduced from 70,000 to 63,000, but it would become non-exempt. Essentially, this is what used to be a manager is more of a first line supervisor. It's more like a boots on the ground position to oversee the mosquito control special field operations. Item 3D are two new classifications for the police department to enhance the level of services of their crime lab. Be the forensic quality assurance manager at 90,000 and a latent print supervisor at 85,000. Item 3E are two new legal support classifications. It would be the new classification of paralegal supervisor as well as legal administrator supervisor. Both these positions would be non-exempt. The paralegal supervisor would be at 60,000. The legal administrative supervisor would be at 57,000. And the whole idea is to provide a first line supervisory support to free the attorney from to handle more extensive type of litigation types of responsibilities. Item 3F is a new job classification for the Water Board of Utility Customer Service Manager. The intent of this new classification would be to upgrade the managerial structure of the board's customer service department. It would have a hiring rate of 88,344, and these positions would essentially serve as division chiefs for the customer service department. There would be 4 such positions, such as customer operations, customer service, billing and accounts receivable, or the key accounts section of the board. The next item is a new job series for the Surgeon Water Board relative to its the automated metering infrastructure program. This would be an analyst type of position. The idea of this new series would be to generate and validate water meter data so that the Storage and Water Board can be more proactive with generating efficiency in water meter provided services. Item 3H is a new classification for Parkway of landscape architect supervisor. Parkway basically has involved itself in a lot more capital projects, and they needed a first line supervisor of its landscape architects and city plannings. Its hiring rate would be at 76,109. The next item, 3I, is a new job classification for the Department of Finance. It would be H Risk Manager. This position is designed to be a supervisory position over the person who handles the day-to-day activities related to ADP business practices for the city. And this would have a hiring rate of 78,024. Staff is also recommending a pay policy to grant the person if they work for the city to be an on-step promotion opportunity.
Hang on one second, Mr. Hagman. Councilmember Green, you want to wait to the end? Okay. Go ahead.
Item 3J is a slight adjustment in the hiring rates of historic preservation building inspector to keep it on par in essence with the Department of Safety and Permits building inspector positions. And it's the intent and in fact to be able to recruit and retain at a more appropriate level for the departments of VCC and HDLC. Item 3K is a hiring rate for the classification of the airport operations analysts. It increased its hiring rate from 90,567 to 96,370. And this is based on the expanded scope of duties that are going to be expected of the position. This position, basically, we rewrote the job specification for it. And this position is designed, in effect, for a role of a position that will handle not only the facility maintenance of the terminal, but it also has development responsibilities concerning the use of both the new and former airport terminals. Item 3L, right now we have French Quarter supplemental pay. French Quarter supplemental pay is designed basically to get officers to volunteer for a duty, a new shift essentially. Right now, we're providing only weekend French Quarter supplemental pay, and the department would like to extend it to the weekend. And this is doing a good job in effect in protecting the safety of the citizens of New Orleans, because we've been able to get people to volunteer for these added shifts. Item 3M is a new special rate of pay for EMS of 10%. And this is similar to the FQQ because it's basically it's trying to get EMS employees to volunteer for peak period shifts, which basically the city has some outside vendors, but basically this is a way in effect to bring it more in-house and to give up people opportunities for added money to select one of these shifts.
All right, Councilmember Green.
To the Civil Service Commission, I just want to thank those who do this analysis that many times goes unseen. Making amendments to the classified pay plan is many times in response to what the council has asked for, but what you also hear in terms of the citizens responding by not taking certain jobs. This is just further emphasis on the fact that it can be good to work for the city of New Orleans in government. One of the biggest changes made to date, assuming that this passes and then moves on correctly, is that you can now take vacation after 2 months versus previously 6 months. That's a substantial change. Another positive that is going on relative to our desire to attract people to work for the city. So I just want to continue what I've said in the past. as we continue to fill jobs, we could change our city if we could fill many of these jobs. I want to encourage our students who are here at our universities to recognize that some of the skills that are needed can be obtained right here at the universities and at other training facilities. But the bottom line is that I think that this is a good move, especially on the paid vacation, the annual leave. And once again, to start where I started at the beginning, I appreciate the Civil Service Commission for making these analyses at our request and at the request of the public.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I'll move for approval of items 3A through M, seconded by Councilmember Moreno. I know her machine is busted right now. There you go. Thank you, Donna. 4 yeas, no nays, that carries unanimously, and we'll put all those items on the consent agenda for the May 2nd meeting. Okay, and then we'll go next to item number 4, presentation from the Health Department, Second Harvest Food Bank, New Orleans Public Schools, at the request of Council President Moreno. Yeah, absolutely. Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so everyone understands like what's happening here, this is all really the result of news that we received back, I want to say it was back in February, when we learned that the state was going to reject the summer EBT program for this upcoming summer. Just so everyone understands what summer EBT is, that is additional dollars that come through EBT in the summertime for kids who are on discounted free lunch to be able to have additional monies to be able to eat during the summer. And so it's a really important program, and the state investment of roughly $3.5 million would have given the state roughly a $71 million return coming in from the federal government. So it was a huge disappointment to hear that it had been rejected in February. Now, since that time, members of the legislature, and I have to give a huge shout out to Representative Jason Hughes and also Representative Amy Freeman, who have really been leading the effort to try to ensure that the legislature pushes summer EBT forward this summer by being able to fund it. And so there was an amendment that was passed in the Appropriations Committee on the House side this week that added that money for the 23-24 year to fund summer EBT. But while there appears to be support in the legislature to fund summer EBT for this summer, where we still have a potential issue is whether or not the state will actually administer the program. And that's where legislators also can't get clarity on whether or not the state's going to be able to administer or choose to administer the program. So in all of this, it kind of leaves us locals kind of hanging here. It's like, because we need to figure out an option as to how we're going to ensure that the kids are able to get the food that they need. These are children who are living in poverty, and we need to make sure that we take care of the kids here in the city of New Orleans, even if the state won't. So with all of that being said, we've been working diligently with Second Harvest Food Bank, our health department, New Orleans Public Schools, trying to come up with some type of backup plan and start moving that forward so that we're not caught flat-footed this summer should we find out in June that summer EBT is not happening. So in doing so, I'm so grateful to everyone who's sitting at this table for coming up with a potential plan that we could quickly implement should we be jammed coming this summer. We've also come up with, found out that there's other additional issues that we may be facing this year that Dr. Avegno will talk about, with additional restrictions on the feeding sites that we've been running every summer as well. So a lot to tackle here, but once again, I'm just grateful to this city council. I'm grateful to everyone sitting at this table for all coming together and saying that here in New Orleans, we're not just gonna, just take this and not do anything about it. We're gonna find a solution. We're gonna find a path to make sure that families get what they need in the city of New Orleans. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to you all, and whoever would like to begin, please do so.
Thank you, Councilman Moreno and the Budget Committee for hearing us, for allowing us to present some of our work on food insecurity, but really make the case for why it is so critical for health outcomes and for public safety. And I just want to thank my team, our Deputy Director, Jeannie Donovan, and we now have a food and nutrition specialist, Daisy Ellis, in the health
Yes.
department, because we identified this through our community health improvement plan as being one of the critical issues that prevents our community from being as healthy as it could be, which doesn't make any sense in a city like New Orleans, which has the best food in the country. So it's a little bit of a paradox. But just to sort of set the stage of what food insecurity is, it's not simply not having food in your cupboard. It is more of a chronic inability to reliably access either quantity of food that's sufficient for proper growth and nutrition or quality of food in order to live a healthy and active life. And that's the USDA definition. We know that more than 30,000 children in New Orleans receive SNAP benefits as of March in this year, and that's a lot of children. And as Dr. Williams will likely tell you, the vast majority of our Orleans Parish school children qualify for free and reduced lunch. And those are lifesavers for so many of our children. We know our food insecurity rate in New Orleans is quite high. And again, most of our children do qualify for critical assistance. There's some data that suggests that New Orleans is the second most food insecure city in the country.
Yes.
Again, that makes no sense because we all know how to cook and we have access to there's abundant food, but we're not providing that access in a way that works for many, many of our families and our children. And so how does that impact particularly our children? Because that's the focus here today. It may seem counterintuitive, but where there is widespread food insecurity, there is large numbers of children who are obese. And that is, again, because of the access. If you can't access fresh, healthy food or have the means to cook it reliably, then you are reliant on cheap, calorie-laden, unhealthy foods, and that breeds obesity. And we certainly know all of the long-term problems that obese children face: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, early death. So anything we can do to reduce child obesity is going to make us a healthier city for generations to come. We know too that being food insecure has negative impacts on your social and emotional development, which are critical, particularly in that those early childhood years around kindergarten. And as I think Dr. Williams will relate, we also know that food insecurity is tied to worsened academic performance, which again limits someone early in life from the income they're able to attain, from the quality of life that they're able to have as adults. So it's really critical to intervene very early on in a child's life to make sure they have proper nutrition. I also really want to stress, and when we were part of a coalition earlier this year trying to convince the state to accept the summer EBT benefits, it's not just health outcomes that are at stake. It is community violence. It is our public safety. We know that communities with high levels of food insecurity are correlated with higher rates of violence and victimization. And if you talk to any of our child advocates who work with youth who are justice involved, the number one problem that they see and the reason why that child may or may not be justice involved is because they do not have enough food at home. So this is a real fundamental issue. It's also associated with higher risk of intimate partner violence and with child abuse. So investing in food security gives us multiple benefits, multiple levels to our community. And when we're particularly looking at summer SNAP, summer EBT, it has a significant positive effect. There was an evaluation of the recent years when summer EBT benefits were administered during the pandemic. And what they found is that there were significant reductions in the number of families who were experiencing very low food security. So those most at risk with the least opportunity to get healthy food. And a pretty significant reduction in food insufficiency among SNAP households. So we know this works and it has benefits, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money. Even $60 per month can have a significant impact on improving children and families' access to food, and it's better food. They're eating healthier. And again, what we know from research is small investments in healthier food in childhood set the stage for a healthier lifespan. So we're excited. We've worked very hard. The health department used $1 million of ARPA funds to put out a NOFA for food insecurity. We have 4 different programs even prior to this. So we have lots of great partners that we work with in order to hopefully improve food security long term. And so we're pleased to be able to work again with Second Harvest. The initial summer EBT likely would have affected 30 to 40,000 students in the New Orleans area. And while we're not able to serve that number, and that is, unfortunate, we still would be able to serve at least 10,000 New Orleans households with school-age children who would have received these benefits with $80 directly to a local grocer. So again, this is an economic benefit as much as it is a health benefit. And I think Natalie from Second Harvest will go into a little bit about how we designed it, but it's designed to be as easy as possible for families to access. The pandemic EBT was really easy. Families got cards in the mail that they could use at grocery stores. There were not barriers. Anytime we put up barriers, we know that families don't get served. So Natalie will talk about that. And our partnership with NOLA Public Schools, we are hoping to really target those families that are most at risk to prioritize the dollars. Again, as you said, Councilman Moreno, we hope that this doesn't have to be enacted. We really, really hope, and we're really excited to see the movement, the bipartisan support in the legislature for the summer EBT. We really hope the state can accept it and do it in time, but we don't want to get into the summer and worry about children being free. So I will turn it over to Natalie.
Thank you so much. Chairperson Moreno and City Council, I want to take a moment to thank you for your incredible leadership and being willing to take on this issue. It is an incredibly serious concern for us across South Louisiana and the country. I also want to recognize our Congressman Troy Carter and Bill Cassidy, who I understand are trying to make the act of Congress work that we would literally have to accept summer EBT this year. And even that, as you mentioned so rightly, doesn't mean that we can administer it, that we can put together the administration needed in time. COVID reduced food insecurity for our children, or poverty, I should say, for our children. Poverty and food insecurity are not exactly the same, but they track very closely together. And COVID actually reduced food insecurity for all members of our community through the supports that we got from the government. And it was very saddening to us that 14 Southern governors chose not to accept the summer EBT program, which was modeled during COVID and was shown to lift so many children out of poverty and food insecurity. If we do something right, it feels to me like we should continue those practices, and that was an extremely effective practice. Listening to Dr. Avegno's compelling numbers, I didn't know how many of you have experienced food insecurity. I have in my life. Hungry children live in fear. The bottom line is they live in fear. They live in fear of crime. They live in fear of, am I going to stay awake in school today? There is no certainty for them, no safety for them. So not only do they not have the health benefits they need that prepare them to learn, there's a complete lack of safety for our kids who don't have the nourishment that they need. Let's see if I can work this. So here's a little bit about the food insecurity numbers in Orleans Parish and Louisiana as a whole. Yes, Dr. Avegno is right. We have the second highest rate of child food insecurity in the country, the highest rate of senior food insecurity in the country. And I am very, very sad to tell you that it's getting worse. We did have 1 out of every 4 of our children in Orleans at risk for hunger. It's now, according to 22 numbers that have been embargoed until a couple of weeks from now, it's now 1 in 3 1 out of every 3 of our kids that are suffering from this issue. The primary way Second Harvest feeds families, children, seniors is through our partners. I want to take a moment to thank all those partners, almost 700 of them across 23 parishes. And you all know who they are. They're your churches, your community-based organizations, your neighborhood-based organizations, hospitals, schools, throughout South Louisiana and our community that always step up, that are always ready to help us when it comes to this issue. So I want to mention that and to say that currently we probably reach about 30,000 children through all those programs here in the greater New Orleans area. But as you point out, it's not enough. We are doing what we can. When we realized this was going to be a challenge for us, we tripled the size of our summer feeding program. That's where we actually package meals from our own commercial kitchens. They can be shelf-stable meals or they can be hot meals depending on the site and location. But I just need to tell you that one of the challenges that we haven't talked about very much is the fact that USDA and the state decided to reinterpret how we did summer feeding, which means that a lot of these sites that we once considered open where we could feed all the kids now have to actually require every single child to fill out an income application and verify their income. We were very concerned. We have 80 locations across South Louisiana. We knew some would pull out because if you think about these summer camps and entities, they do not have the wherewithal to get all of these children to fill out paperwork. And in the past, we'd used community eligibility. But this year, on top of not accepting the 71 million, the decision was made to make it harder for us to do summer feeding. In addition to that.
Hang on, Natalie. So was that a state decision or is that a USDA decision?
Oh, very hard to clarify.
Yeah.
We pushed back because we did not see it in the federal regs, but our regional USDA office said, this is absolutely the case that any entity that charges even the smallest amount of tuition, even if it's $10 for supplies, can no longer be called an open site. So our contention was if a child shows up in a site and they're fed, whether they're enrolled or not, that site should be considered open. And that's the way we proceeded in the past. It's how we've managed to work with as many sites as we have. USDA said no. And the state and the state together changed the way they interpreted those rules. We did not find the federal language that backed that up. But as usual, this is clear as mud, kind of where the rule actually comes from.
I mean, the red tape barrier that has literally just been put up for our feeding sites is going to be unbelievable then with what you just described.
It is. Now we have, as you can see from this slide, we're doing 3 times what we did before. I will say that most of our locations have really stepped up, heroically stepped up, because the fear is so great in the community that said, we're going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
If we have to qualify every one of these children, we'll figure out how to do it. A few have said, we just don't have the wherewithal to do it, and they pulled out. So.
Wow.
We also have a kitchen that is no longer in existence here that was providing these meals in the past. And we had another organization that pulled back because they did not know how this rule was going to be interpreted. And so they didn't feel confident that they could execute the program, because if we don't have that income data on every single child, we will not get reimbursed by the federal government. They do not pay the entire cost of the meal, but they pay a portion of it. And that's kind of how we make our budget work, is we take that and then we get private dollars on top of that. And that's how we feed as many kids as possible. So we have 80 locations right now. A good number of them right here in Orleans Parish. It's 171% increase over the number of children. We'll be serving over 5,500 children. I believe it's something like 1,700 or 1,800. But as you heard from Dr. Avegno, 30 to 40,000 can use the meals. I would tell you that every day now in Orleans Parish, 23,000 children are actively hungry, 23,000. And tens of thousands more are risking it every single day because of lack of resources. So that's how acute the problem is. A little bit about the proposed program. Again, thank you to the health department. Thank you to your team, Helena, and everyone that helped put this together. I think it's a great program. I agree with Dr. Avegno. Nothing beats SNAP. Nothing beats putting or SNAP-like programs, putting money into families' pockets that they can spend in our local grocery stores. Not only does that family have choice and dignity, it also is an economic boom for our retailers. And I know we're talking about Orleans, but one of the things that I think got the governor to reconsider this decision is that this is even harder in our rural areas, whose rural grocery stores really would have depended on this kind of income. We are finding that we have to send our mobile grocery store into more and more communities as grocery stores close down because they can't make it. So here's what this program looks like for us. Thank you so much. And thank you to the school system, which we think is going to be the critical partner in helping us to quickly identify these students that are eligible for this service quickly and as dignified a way as possible, as seamlessly as possible. Each household will have a child enrolled in the New Orleans public school and qualify for free and reduced price meals, or a school that's using community eligibility will serve every child in a school that uses that measurement. Households will sign up using an online portal that we're working on right now. And we're going to have a list of grocery stores, hopefully finding ones that are close to them because food deserts is a huge issue around food insecurity here. And then we'll ask them to attach, as they respond to this, all the necessary documentation that shows that they're eligible. We will buy and physically mail the gift cards out to households as fast as we can get them enrolled. So we're currently creating the online portal. We're conducting outreach, or we will conduct outreach via flyers as soon as this program is approved. We'll manage the enrollment of participants. We'll purchase the grocery store gift cards. We'll mail the gift cards directly to households, and we'll track all those households and provide the information back to the city, the health department, to the school board, anyone else who would like to see how this program is operating. And that's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Williams?
Yeah, so thank you, first of all, for prioritizing this, and thank you for the partnership with Second Harvest and with our health department. One of the things that we want to emphasize is looking at where the needs are greatest. And so the school district has established a poverty index where we can prioritize our school communities where the needs are the greatest. And so we will start there in the event that we do have to enact this program, so that again, we can aim the resources where they're most needed. Around 80% of our scholars and families do qualify for that free or reduced price lunch. And as stated, many of our schools have the community eligibility program where all students eat without paying. As an educator, one of the things that we oftentimes dread is summer. And I know that sounds odd because you would think that summer is a break, but the unfortunate part of it is that summer is extremely hard for a lot of our families. In education, we oftentimes look at it through the lens of academics, and you may have heard of the summer slide. And this is where during the summer, because of not having the consistency as it relates to academic expectations, reading, math, and so forth during the summer, scholars can lose as much as 2 to 3 months and sometimes nearly a year of the gains that they may have made during the course of that school year, which means that they're entering the new school year further behind than they were at the end of the school year. And when you add to that the potential deficits that lack of nutrition, lack of proper nutrition can create, then certainly those numbers could easily be exacerbated. And we know that proper nutrition is necessary for brain function. And this is whether you're talking about those omega-3 fatty acids or proper iron. Nutrition matters. And that's why we oftentimes see that correlation correlation between health outcomes and poverty. So we're just excited about the opportunity to be able to support our families over the summer, and not only academically, but from a nutritional standpoint. And the ultimate goal is for our scholars to be safe and to be healthy and to enter the school year next year ready to learn. And we know that's only possible if they are receiving proper nutrition. So again, we appreciate the priority that this has been given and look forward to partnering with the city, the health department, and Second Harvest to make sure that we can feed as many families as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you to all of you. And once again, I want to thank the city council because every member of the council is a co-author on the ordinance that would fund this, which is setting aside $1 million to be able to fund this initiative to provide the cards, the $80 gift cards for eligible families. I also want to mention this. I think because of this particular issue, many in our community have now learned about this harsh reality with our children of how many of them are living with food insecurity. And so they wanted to step up and also help Second Harvest. I want to thank Partners in Crime and the fact that they've decided to dedicate their Summerfest and proceeds from their Summerfest to go to Second Harvest after really, having that harsh realization hit them. And so I appreciate them. I also want to thank our former police chief, Michelle Woodfork, along with our clerk, Donna Glapion. They've decided to partner together and brought me in as well to do a little event as well, raising money for Second Harvest. So this is something that's really growing throughout the city of New Orleans, from community to government to businesses, on the fact that we want to support our kids and we want to support families who need our help. And it's just been devastating what's been happening on the state level. And so, we're going to step up every single time. And I appreciate every single person at this table for doing what you do. With that, I'm sorry, my screen's not working. Thank you. Councilmember Green.
Sometimes the government, by doing certain things that are so antagonistic, really motivates and galvanizes folks. And so in some respects, what the governor is doing now is just like I think he's done with the Sewage and Water Board Task Force. Now we're looking at the regional issues that we have, the raw sewage in St. Tammany, the billing problems and the flooding in Jefferson Parish. But even though the governor has the power that he has, and he has 2/3 support in the legislature, just as we're seeing now, there are things that can be done. So, Councilmember Moreno, as a former legislator, could you talk to the public about some things that we can do to continue to put pressure on the state government to do the right thing with regards to this issue and others?
So that's a great question, Councilmember Green. And I think we've really shown the power of the people, not only in the city of New Orleans, but in the state of Louisiana on this issue of summer EBT. When Representative Jason Hughes in the special session, not this session, but in the special session, when he was trying to fund summer EBT in the special session, he wasn't really getting the support of the rest of the legislature. He was facing a really uphill battle. But it's the people of Louisiana that contacted their state representatives and let them know, and state senators, let them know exactly how important this program really is and how it just didn't make sense that a $3.5 million investment had a $71 million return to help kids living in poverty. So that right there, I think just the constant outreach to your elected representative or senator can really make a difference. And certainly in this case, it's proven that it has.
Thank you all for the work that you're doing.
Anybody else? I don't have a screen.
I thank you all for being here. We appreciate the approach. Also want to thank Councilmember Moreno. I guess I might say it a little bit differently than Councilmember Green. To quote somebody I know, everything should be a both and approach, and not an either or. And I don't understand for the life of me if Baton Rouge is so committed to fighting crime and that we're going to have a crime session doing ABC and changing reforms. And we know that doing things front end to help people, to provide them with maternal care, to provide them with maternal health, to provide them with mental health, to provide them with food, all of these things that can front end avoid what we were trying to do, we cut both, then we are just exacerbating all the problems on the back end. And I'll get off my soapbox in a second, but really feel like it is better for us, not only from a moral perspective, to do this because I think it is an imperative, but also if we're thinking through from an efficiency standpoint, it is better to spend money front end and raise happy, healthy, productive children and families as opposed to leading to destructive consequences and more money on the back end. Thank you.
Any public comment on this or the ordinance? Okay, no comments. Look at that. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll just take up the agenda item number 5, which is the 2 ordinances. 3, 4, 6, 5, 7. We'll take up first. I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Seconded
Second.
by Councilmember Green.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye. That's
Thank
4 yeas.
And now we'll do the expenditure. That's 3, 4, 6, 5, 8. I'll move,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and that moves forward to the council. And so look, the next steps are, we'll wait to see, in the next few days, what news we get handed down from the state on what's going to happen with summer EBT. But if for some reason it doesn't look like it's going to be possible for it to be administered, then we're already ready to go. We just hit, adopt this ordinance at the full council, and we don't have to worry about introducing something new, waiting to lie over, having a committee meeting. We're already ready to go with our backup plan. So thank you, Mr. Chair, to the entire council for helping with this effort.
Councilmember Moreno, ordinarily, I like to, because there's so many of them, because there's 2 ordinances, put everything on consent that we can. But because of the importance of these, do you want to keep them on the regular agenda?
Keep them on the regular, because also I would have to then pull them from consent if we're not going to move forward with them in that meeting. So yeah, pull them from, let's not have them on consent, and then that'll allow for us to have more flexibility with the ordinances.
Sounds perfect. Thank you. So what we'll do then is item 3, A through M will go on consent. Item 5 will not go on consent, go on the regular agenda. And assuming that everything else is approved in items 6 through 14, those will go on consent agenda. All right. Okay. Let's take up item 6, ordinance calendar numbers 34, 622, and 623. This is to appropriate donated funds to the CEO's office for the maintenance and upkeep of the Joan of Arc statute at 1,000 Decatur. It's a grand total of $4,535. Let me just get a ruling here. Can we vote in globo on both of these ordinances at one time, or do we need to take them separately? I would think we could take them up together. Excuse me? No, take up 6, both 622 and 623. Okay, so I will Councilmember Green has moved on item number 6 together. I've seconded. 3 yeas, no nays. All right, item number 7 is to appropriate grant funds to healthcare for homeless COVID. It is $93,816. I will accept a motion. Moved by Councilmember Green. I'll second. 3 yeas, no nays. Item number 8 is to appropriate State Act 170 funds to the Office of Mayor for inflation reduction activities with Strive Foundation for Louisiana, Delgado, UNO Research and Technology Foundation, and Sank of Fresh Stop Market. It's $300,000, moved by Councilmember Green. I've seconded. Three yeas, no nays. All right, item number 9 is to appropriate unspent funds in fiscal year 2023 to law department to pay judgments. Mr. White, I know you want to speak on this. I'll move for approval, and you'll have 2 minutes, sir, to speak about this.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak before the council. I wanted to voice my support for the council to approve these funds to pay judgments. I wanted to bring to your attention that there is a significant delay between the time judgments are settled and paid. And I think that some of the funds here are going to go to negotiated judgments that have been agreed to settle. And it's probably been like 4 or 5 months since that occurred. So there's an issue with the process of cutting checks once settlements are made. The broader concern that I have is the inability for the city to spend funds that are appropriated to pay judgments. I share with most of the council, and Councilmember Jeruso, you have been leading the charge on trying to solve this problem. That for the past 2 years, the council has appropriated millions of dollars and less than half is spent each year. In 2022, $4 million were appropriated, and only 25% that was meant to pay judgments was spent. And then last year, only 50%. And I really would encourage the city council to consider adopting a process. Councilmember Jeruso, I think that your staff is working on an ordinance that will help expedite that, because you have 500 judgment holders on the list. You have $33 million in judgments that are out there. You have funds available to pay judgments, yet the city apparently does not have the focus or the ability to spend the money that the city council, has appropriated. So I don't bring a criticism to you, the city council, because you have appropriated funds, but it's clear that the process on which the city uses to resolve and settle and pay judgments is broken. And I think more funds need to be applied for paying judgments. And that's an issue that I hope the city council will consider. And just one other point, and I only have 2 minutes. I know. Oh, well, there it is right there.
Yeah.
Now I know where it is. But last year, the city council in 2023, you appropriated $9 million to pay the judgment list down. And of that $9 million, you had $7 million in one-time funds. But $1 million of those monies went to pay a federal judgment, not the judgment list. And if, I'm not saying that federal judgment should not be paid, but I think at the time when the city council had discussion about this issue, the impetus was to reduce, at that time, the judgment list was over $38 million. And okay, and so I would like for you to consider that when you think about funding judgments, and to make sure that funds go to the judgments that you intended for the money that is appropriated.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas.
Mr. White, unfortunately, that doesn't just apply to judgments. I think it follows up on the conversation that Councilman Jeruso and I had yesterday. These public meetings are good to bring attention to stuff. But, I come from, well, the way you fix those things are working meetings, away from the lights and away from the cameras, dealing with processes, services, and deliverables. And I think we're conscious of that, especially after some meetings about process and who, what, or why. So let's hope that can get a little better. But, these public meetings bring it to attention, but it's not new. And there is an effort, because, we can meet with the soap operas and the dog and pony shows all the time.
Yes.
But if it doesn't get done,
Yes, sir.
what do you care whether we're for it or Mickey Mouse is for it? It's not happening. It has to do with process.
I
It has to
agree.
do with work ethic. That has to do with systems. and we're keenly aware of it in a meeting, we hope critical personnel to talk about those deliverables.
Yes. Councilmember Thomas, I appreciate that, and I understand exactly what you're saying. In my professional life, I've worked for over 100 cities around the country and solving complex, difficult issues, not particularly on judgments, but management consulting and process. And one thing that I have done as a part of this endeavor is that I have shared information with the city council as to research and more detailed analysis of the city's judgment list, payments that have been made and processed. And if at any point of any of that information I've shared with the city council, if that is helpful, I'll be more than happy to meet with you or other council members about the information that we've amassed as to the process and possible solutions that would help expedite it. One simple way, and I'm sure I don't have any time.
No, I was gonna say, I know I've been telling you to sit tight, but you're gonna see legislation on for the next council meeting and then at the beginning of June. So,
Okay,
all right,
I
it's coming.
appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, I've moved, seconded by Councilmember Green. Members, please vote your machines. 5 yeas, no nays. All right, next up, item number 10. This transfers funds in the general fund to various departments to cover shortages during the fiscal year. Total transfer is $32 million. Do any members have a question about this? Seeing none, moved by Councilmember Green, seconded by Councilmember Morel. No Councilmember Moreno, yeah, your machine, five yeas, no nays. Item number 11, this appropriate grant funds received from the National Association of County and City Health Officials to the Health Department. Create a media campaign to increase syphilis awareness and linkage to care in Orleans Parish. Transfers $32,000, moved by Councilmember Green, seconded by Councilmember Morel. Five yeas, no nays. Councilmember Morel, you want to speak on item number 12?
Yes, someone here answer questions on 12. All right, it's, as I recall, and I could be wrong from my legislative time, this comes from the Causeway Commission, is that correct?
This is 12. Well, we've done with number 11, so we
Yeah.
voted on that.
All right,
This
number
is-
12.
This is number 12.
Number
about-
12, this deals with the intergovernmental transfers, $25,000 for bulletproof vests.
Answer your question, we don't have that information. There was not a request to have NOPD present, so that if they got act funds, yeah.
Well, so if it is from where I think it is,
Mhm.
there is a amount of money that's distributed to all the neighboring parishes from the Causeway Commission from toll revenue funds. And the question I have, and you can come back to me on it, there should be a similar amount, another 25,000 that goes to Nord. And typically they're done as a pair because literally half goes to NOPD, half goes to Nord. I just want to make sure that we're also tracking at $25,000 supposed to go to Nord from that pot of money from the Causeway.
All right, we'll find out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So you want to defer on number 12? Okay, all right.
Want to finally listen to Bob.
All right, sounds great. Moved by Councilmember Green, seconded by Councilmember Morel. Members, please vote your machines. 5 yeas, no nays. All right, item number 13, ordinance to approve funds from appropriation 100 personal services to other operating for resilient communities. It's $1 million. I'll move for approval. Second by Councilmember Morel. Waiting on one more. Thank you. 5 yeas, no nays. I didn't want to say any names, Councilmember Morel. And then, last one, this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor, to enter into an amendment to the previously executed CEA between the city and New Schools New Orleans. This has been one of the things I advocated for, I think, in the 2023 budget about making sure schools were getting more Medicaid funding. And so, this is important to make sure that we're not leaving federal dollars on the table for our public schools. So I'll move for approval. Seconded by Councilmember Green. 5 yeas, no nays. All right. Next up, as we've been promising to do, quarterly reporting on both ARPA and fund balance. I'll invite the CAO's team to the table to make that presentation. And we'll work through those. I have, Mr. White, comment cards. Technically, we don't have to take public comment on non-voting items, but I'll let you make comment after the ARPA and the fund balance. And if anybody else has ARPA commentary, we'll take comment on that too. All right, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I believe that I will quickly introduce the table. Of course, you know Courtney Story, myself, Mikkel, and Tricia. If you want to introduce yourselves, that'd be great. I know you've met them before, but their role.
Yes, my name is Dr. Tricia Diamond, and I am the ARPA Implementation Director.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mikkel Mackey. I'm the ARPA Project Manager Supervisor.
Mr. Chair, I will defer to you on kind of the process you'd like us to run. I tried to be as voluminous as possible with the information. In email yesterday, there is 2 pieces, one which we are presenting today, which is 103 slides, and then I had a adjacent piece of documentation that was at 113 that gives the project scope that breaks down each one of the projects. So if it's your will to jump to specific ones, we can start, or if you want us to run through the whole thing, we're happy to do that. But I know that it's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. I mean, the whole thing will be posted online so
Yes, sir.
people can have all of that. 2 things from my perspective. One, more macro and then a little bit more micro. Macro is, I think all of the money for ARPA has to be allocated by June. And so I guess, are we gonna meet? I just wanna make sure that we're gonna meet in July to talk about next steps.
Sure. I can give you kind of a broader picture. So as of today, 79% of the entirety of our ARPA funding has either been spent or obligated. To break that into more granular, about 65% has actually been spent. It's gone. And 21% is in the process, and that represents about $81 million. As we've always discussed, there will be a risk assessment essentially happening and ongoing, and we have an internal working document relative to that will determine and recommend what projects will make it through that process so that we have no money left on the table or not spent appropriately, and which will not, that we'll have to, as a administration council, determine along with the public what is the highest and best use for those remaining ARPA dollars. Sum it to say the team in general has been, I believe, very responsive and programmatically charged to ensuring that execution is absolutely necessary. The team now is close to 12 members, led by Tricia, as you know, and we thought it was very important to ensure that we had this additional staff that was able to execute and manage these specific projects with timeliness and project management skills so that the burden wouldn't just be placed directly on the director or the deputy director, who are also doing 10 million other things. So that was the formulation and the organizational structure we thought imperative that we wanted to highlight and update you on, as well as the status of some of the projects. There are projects that I think if it's important that I'd like to maybe go to the slide of the process that we evaluate when we actually get a project. And this kind of edifies why in the beginning, as we always discussed, making sure the scopes and the requirements and everything were belts and suspenders, so that we have complete compliance with all the federal guidelines. And now we're at the stage where we're really on essentially 3, 4, and 5. And I think you're going to see, and that's probably why the money is being spent so significantly faster, because we wanted to be thoughtful on the front end as we develop the scope and the requirements, based on the input from our legal team and the procurement experts. So that is a big transition where we are now, and probably why you see the money being significantly more effectively and efficiently spent. So once again, I don't want to be too obtuse in our conversation, but at the same time, I would like to address any direct questions or provide any specific project input for the, you know, the 100+ projects that we have. And I know that it is posted online and on the web, and we can have any kind of follow-up discussions that you had, but providing on the front end, this amount of information we thought was important. Every project is associated with a project timeline, a breakdown, a risk assessment, a red, green, and everything seems to be rolling to the best of my knowledge and understanding. The ones that are on the risk assessment list, we are watching far more closely, and that does not necessarily mean that it is an internal issue. Sometimes we have a subrecipient that has not been able to hire enough people to be able to execute the program, so we're waiting on the subrecipient, whether that's public school system or another nonprofit, and so some of those have lagged. If I will provide any other information, I will stop talking and let you digest and have any response necessary.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I guess the bottom line is we'll just catch up in July about where things stand and what the next steps ought to be. I obviously on the spending am really interested in DPW spending, and I guess I don't understand these slides because there's 53 and 54. On 53, the numbers that we had received is that essentially $380,000 had been spent on catch basin cleaning, and this is showing 2.5.
Yes, sir. So in the pre-meetings, that was originally on the sheet as well, and I kind of pulled my hair out and I said, this cannot be the case, because I'm getting reports on how much work and how much we're doing. So they unpack the system a little bit, and that's where the number, and I'm going to turn it over to Mikkel, who can speak more intelligently to that on the actual number as opposed to what is being actually in the final stages of brass as opposed to what's already been spent and done.
Okay.
So if you want to, Mikkel, give council members the update on catch basins and whatever else is necessary to.
Okay, so currently for the catch basin project, we're over 20% completed with the overall project. What our process is that the contractors submit their invoices in Procore. Those are then validated with their daily reports, the amount of catch basins that they're cleaning, the drainage lines. And then once those are approved by DPW's engineer, then it hits brass. So the 2.5 number that you see are all of our invoices that are currently in queue, which would be in Procore, validated with their daily reports and the quantities they've completed. And then we're just awaiting for those to be inputted in brass.
I guess I'm just struggling. We've spent $2.5 million to clean 1,500 catch basins and only 145,000 linear feet of line. I mean, so here's my understanding is that the $3 million, basically $3 million over 3 years, $3.3 million, 7,000 catch basins. I mean, we're not going to get close to 7,000 at this rate.
So what we're tracking right now is that to complete the actual project scope that has been validated with work orders is going to be closer to 6,000 catch basins. And then we will complete, I believe, about 650,000 linear feet of drainage lines. That is also validated with different things that we have in the project. So we also have to go through and clean out different drainage lines that are blocked. And also replace different manhole covers, validate that stuff, and then that will complete the project. So the estimate that we originally provided was an estimate based upon the work orders that we had in queue. As we're validating those in the field, we're getting the actual numbers.
Well, all right. So let's assume the number has moved from 7 to 6, which DPW has not informed us of. That's an issue number one. There's only 1,600. How are we going to clean 5,400, 6,600, whatever the next number is? Sorry, I'll get out my calculator and do it right. But there's a huge number that only 800,000 is going to cover. So how is that going to work mathematically? I mean, in other words, we've spent $2.5 million cleaning 1,600 catch basins. There's 4,400 that still need to be cleaned. And if we only have 800,000, that's never going to cover 4,400. I mean, we spent 2.5 on 1,600.
I can go back and validate those numbers with DPW. What I can say right now is that all of the work orders that we have in the system have been validated with the engineering monitoring firm. We have about 12 work orders that are still being approved. So once we approve all of the work orders that are going to be inclusive of this entire project, I can give you hard numbers.
I mean, I'm just using the math that's in front of me. And based on what I have, if there's 4,400 more catch basins to be clean, it's $7 million. So your math doesn't work. And I'm not saying yours, I'm saying the math doesn't work. I mean, guys, like, and I'm really, my frustration is at DPW, not the people at this table, but my head is gonna explode because we've had this contract, we allocated the money in December of 2022. The contract didn't get executed until February 15th. Now we're saying we spent $2.5 million to clean 1,600 catch basins. And what's projected is really $7 million more to get to the number that we're supposed to be. I mean, we got to be able to get the numbers right and tell people what they're getting. And if the answer is the lateral lines are costing more and we're doing other things, great. But we got to know what the answers are because this isn't adding up. It's just not going to get to the numbers. It's not. Math is undefeated lifetime. Please get us answers. And then on the right-of-way improvements, there's been nothing spent.
So with the right-of-way improvement projects, as you know, there are 3 projects. One is fully executed, which is the mast arm upgrades and improvements. Right now, they're in the process of purchasing the material so that the contractor can get started on site. The other 2 projects are in the contract execution phase, which both of them have hit brass, and we're expecting them to be executed shortly.
Okay, well, when is the money going to start being spent?
What we're forecasting right now is summer 2024.
Anybody else want to talk? I mean, I'm just Councilmember Thomas. Again, I realize you guys are here to try and fix these problems. So my frustration is not, again, with the people sitting at this table, but I cannot stress enough to DPW that residents are fed up. We put out a survey yesterday, by the way, about what the greatest needs are in the city in preparation for the District Day community meeting we're having on Monday. And so far, the responses are overwhelmingly about infrastructure. #1 complaint. And I realize that things are not always easy and also that giving people more money sometimes is a problem. But this has to be a priority on both of these fronts. And I know we've all been promising our residents, we're going to get catch basins cleaned. We're going to get that striping taken care of. We're going to get that point repair work done. And the longer it takes, the harder it is to maintain confidence. Councilmember Thomas.
I really don't want to talk, but this conversation is in line with our conversations and some work history. We have some companies in this region that are experts in catch basins, 27-inch drain clearance, identifying the issues. I don't want to misrepresent them, but knowing a little bit about it, you don't have to inspect individually or do every line. If they use ITV systems, right, camera systems, they can actually go in the line to determine which ones. If we're reviewing all of the 70,000+ catch basins, that is a tremendous amount of waste of funds. The other thing for the experts who do it in this region is the weather tells you where the problem is. You don't need some genius legislation or some big mouth conversation about some scientific equation. You just need to see historically where water is standing that didn't and where water is draining. So I would hope that we wouldn't be wasting a lot of money to individually take a look at every line, use ITV systems, get a copy of the map that the Sewage and Water Board has, go to those hot spots where water seems to be standing, where it never flooded, and it will reveal to yourself automatically what the issue is. If we are chasing every catch basin and every public works 27-inch drain line, we're gonna waste money that could go to NOAA, that could go to housing, that could go to criminal justice. So just a little experience there in that area, and there are people that are ready to help and assist. They just have to be engaged. I've always told, be smart enough to know that you don't know everything. And there's some people who know a lot about this stuff, and they're in this region and they're in this town, and we haven't talked to them.
So
I have, well, you and I have, but the people who need them haven't.
So I want to make sure that I'm representing the efforts done by the catch basin team and DPW correctly. So when we originally started this project, we had a monitoring contract, which additionally works with the contractors to make sure that they're doing the work correctly. So the monitoring contract, the engineers go through and they do create a heat map. They create a heat map based upon our 911 and our 311 calls. Every time we've had a weather event since we started this project, we've done a revision of that heat map to see if it interacts with what we found before. So we're also going to try to do some lessons learned once this project is complete. We will develop another heat map and look at, have we solved some of the issues that we saw originally when we started the project? So there is funding that is associated with the monitoring contract in the 2.5. So it's not a one-to-one where you can look at the numbers and say, well, we're not going to complete what we originally set out to do, because we also have engineers and inspectors that are looking at the lines, looking at areas that are need to be corrected and fixed. And within that contract, they're going to go back and create pretty much other right-of-way contracts where we need to fix some of the issues. Our goal.
Well, there are three categories: cleaned, replaced, or repaired.
Correct. So right now, these two contracts are focusing on cleaning and inspecting, and then we're going to develop a scope of work based upon some of our repairs. Some of the repairs may be very extensive. And so that may require a new ITB to be set out with design drawings, or they may be simple repairs.
And Councilman Chairman, if you don't mind, but I think what's important, and first of all, thank you. What you need to let us know is that if it's clean, right, and if it's not replaced or repaired, then that doesn't change the condition. Because the water still doesn't have any way to funnel from the 27-inch line to the 36-inch line into the drain system that takes it to 17th Street to the lake. So just because it's clean, Councilmember Giarrusso, if it's damaged there, and there's an incident in like the Lafitte Canal where they cleaned some of the debris that was in the canal, but they didn't remove the 8-foot wall of mud that still exists there and acts as a natural dam, a barrier. So that area where that system floods into, and if I'm saying something wrong, you can tell me, that 8-foot wall of mud is actually still there. So though the debris in the car and some of the other stuff was removed, there's a natural dam that's been set because of the gathering of mud and other stuff and sediment there that is still in the same place.
So just to kind of respond to that example, in order for them to know that it was a wall of mud, then they would have to clean and then come back and inspect with the CCTV. Currently, our efforts have been focused on cleaning. We have a backlog of about 50 sites where we're going to go back and CCTV those areas. And so we're trying to get a backlog so that we have a huge amount for a crew to go out and do that work. Then the team will be able to identify, this is the specific issue. This is either repair or we need to go in and unclog the line. And once we have that information, we can do it correctly. I think our biggest thing is that we want to make sure that we do this correctly with this funding, and then we'll be able to assess what actual issues, damages we do have.
Thank you.
Councilmember Morrell.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. I think the questions have been asked and answered, though the answers aren't necessarily satisfactory. What I do want to say is that I share in Councilman Thomas and Councilman Druso's frustration in that the patience of the city as a whole is wearing very thin in regards to the backlog of projects and how far behind we are on issues. What I want to highlight is that we are under tremendous pressure from the hospitality industry to do all these things downtown for a Super Bowl. What I want to emphasize to everyone here and everyone listening is what's going to happen is that when the city, DPW and everyone else does all this work to quickly solve the downtown issues, it is going to have the opposite effect across the entire city of New Orleans, because when the city was under the gun for the Super Bowl to solve drainage and infrastructure issues and striping, we're going to do it downtown quickly to get the revenue the Super Bowl will generate. I think everyone needs to expect every resident in the city is going to have the opposite opinion, which is because my neighborhood is not in the sphere where the Super Bowl will be, I've been waiting for years to have my catch basins cleaned, my curb cuts done, my street striped. I'm still waiting in line, whereas the commercial corridors of the city, because we're keeping the fresh, clean front of our home nice, they don't care about what's happening in the back half. It kind of makes me remember, this is my history minor rearing itself. There used to be this, everyone who's ever studied history remembers that during the fall of the Russian Empire, when people would go to St. Petersburg, you would go through villages and the villages would look tremendously perfect and put together. And only years later, you would find out there was a facade in front of every house, and behind the homes, there was destitution, there was horrible, there were people starving, walls collapsing, but the facade was nice. I think the frustration that you're beginning to have in the city is when stuff like the Super Bowl shows up, and we all want the Super Bowl, we want the revenue, it's great, but it reminds people that in the city often we are overly concerned with the facade and making sure the world thinks things here are working correctly while not dealing with the issues that are generational, multi-year problems that we don't solve and don't move the needle. I think catch basins has kind of become a lightning rod because we know when the basins aren't cleared, the flooding is worse. We flood during every rain event. And what we hear from constituents all the time is we don't feel like there's a sense of urgency in the city to help us not flood. So when we're up here and we're looking at the numbers and we're showing our frustration, as a council, our job is to help you figure out with the CAO the resources to solve a problem. We collectively hit a wall when the resources are allocated and the problem's not solved. Because at that point, the council, other than beating up on y'all right now, we've done our job. You asked for money, we gave it to you. When the job's not done, somebody has to own responsibility for that. Because at this point, it's not a money problem. You have the money. As we speak right now, you're saying we're trying to figure out what contractors, how to expedite this, but it's not a money problem, it's a management problem. And really the challenge I lay before y'all is you need to start coming back to us and showing what are the management problems you've solved to expedite this process in a definitive way, and what are the results of those management changes, because it's not a money problem at this point. And I promise you that as we see trucks out on Poydras, on Canal Street, on every major thoroughfare downtown, doing the striping, cleaning the basins, every resident is going to leave work, go home, and curse you out and curse us out, because they're going to say, that's super nice that y'all are cleaning out the basins twice this summer on Poydras for a Super Bowl. My house is flooded 3 times because no one's been out here. And I'm paying the taxes, so that gets done. And that's a fair complaint. And we have to be able to show people that we have this sense of urgency to address their systemic issues and not just deal with how our front lawn looks. Thank you.
All right, did any other council members have any other questions about other parts of this? I mean, I do see in a lot of cases, money has been spent either completely or is obviously like in process. For example, it looks like blight is right on track or it ought to be abatement. But I want to see if any other council members have any other comments about anything else before I get to public comment. All right, not seeing any. Mr. White, I know you want to talk about judgments, and Ms. Katzen, I know you want to speak to.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to present. In the ARPA update report on page 100 is the law department fund balance. And on the report, it says that there's $1.6 million remaining. And as I mentioned earlier, last year, these funds were used to pay a federal judgment and not the $33 million judgment list. And I just want to bring to your attention that there's another federal judgment payment due on April the 30th of $1.7 million. And just that, you know, not that I have not been appointed the spokesman for everybody on the 500 person or entity judgment list, but I just want to make you aware that there's there's a finite amount of resources that have been put to the judgment list. And just that as these funds are being spent, that they're being spent in accordance to your will on the council. And so when you look at this report, they're speaking to 495 open items. What they're referring to the judgment list. They're not referring to the federal judgment. There's two different lists, federal judgments and state court judgments. So like I said, on April 30th, there's a $1.75 million payment that's going to be due, and to make sure, I don't know if it's coming out of this fund or not, but if it does, that means there's less money to pay toward the judgment list. Okay, so I'm wanted to bring that to your attention, and then I got a few seconds. Generally, there's a lot of different reports that deal with judgments, and it's very difficult for the council to follow in summary the various aspects that drive how judgments are paid. And I think it would be helpful for the council if someone in government would provide you a consolidated report so you can see at a glance the funding that's available and funds that are being paid toward judgments.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Yes.
Ms. Katzen?
Good morning, Nellie Katzen with Committee for a Better New Orleans. I wanted to thank the council for passing the ordinance and the administration for following through on it to create the dashboard for ARPA funds and also to hire such a robust team for managing ARPA. I hope that this is an opportunity to set precedent on greater transparency regarding spending outcomes over other funds in addition to the ARPA funds. To that end, I wanted to echo Councilmember Morell's remarks about the prioritization of spending on major projects, both in ARPA funds and otherwise. I think the city needs to really dramatically consider how we are prioritizing projects and making sure not only that we're able to spend money on time before it gets clawed back, but also that we're able to meet residents' needs as a priority and be able to state and point to exactly how that priority was determined. To that end, I have a couple of questions about the fund balance. I'm seeing updates here within this slideshow about how much has been spent of the fund balance that was allocated already, but nothing about how much unallocated fund balance still remains, and what the plan is for updating the public about and monitoring the funds that were unspent in last year's budget and so on going forward.
You want to answer that? I mean, I think the simple answer is ordinarily there's a cleanup ordinance which comes forward about funds that are that are allocated but not spent. And then the cleanup ordinance comes back into the budget for the next year's budget. And then there's a decision made usually at the mid-year budget adjustments about using that money for revenue shortfalls or for projects that are needs. Is that the gist of it?
Chairman, I think you highlighted it well. yes, I think even just previously you all adopted or moved forward an agenda that was the cleanup ordinance that reallocated other operating into personnel to address some of those shortfalls. Just want to remember and for the public edification is that we went to a budget to actuals model. So we just funded based on last year, but we have allowed hiring for virtually all front-facing and public safety agencies. So we had to reconcile that through the mid-year. We have not tapped into the fund balance as of yet this year. Of course, the audit closes June 30th, and that's ultimately when we will have the best numbers to assess what is assigned and what is unassigned relative to the fund balance.
And so the fund balance updates that are detailed here within this report are fund balance from 2022.
Mr. Chair, 23.
From 23. And so is there a remaining fund balance from 2023 that has not been allocated?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to speak in a complete absolute, but not all fund balance projects have been spent right now. So directly to answer that question, there would be some portion that would carry over because projects already assigned to that 23 fund balance have not been completely spent. That doesn't mean that they won't be spent in that year period. And so there could be a rollover into 24. So I want to answer that at least from that perspective, there could be rollover, but the assignment of the 23 fund balance has already been identified unless it's reallocated.
This is really confusing for the public when we are taking American Rescue Plan dollars and joining them together with fund balance dollars and then can't get a clear answer on how much is in that fund balance and what projects could be funded by it. I think it dissolves trust and it makes it really hard as advocates working to get community projects funded and working in concert with the city and the city council to make sure that all of our constituents' needs are met. This has been challenging.
Budgeting is not easy. I'll be the first person to say that. But in fairness, if you have the slides, you start on page 1 through 89, that's all ARPA. And then page 91 through the end is fund balance through the end.
Yes.
So
Just one thing I could highlight as well is that almost without exception, nothing is designed for a one-year project. It would be very clean if we had a one-year project, spent it, closed it out, but almost the entirety of these projects are meant for the course of several years. And so they will continue to roll over.
Into funding that supposedly is in the balance, and at some point we'll get an update about how much is there. I'm trying to get a clear answer on how much.
But Nelly, like you can't quite get the clear answer that you're looking for because the audit isn't done. And I'm just telling you, like, from doing this now for 6 years, we always want to ask what fund balance is, and we don't get the answer until the audit is finished. So you can't count dollars about that is potentially in fund balance and unspent until we know what that amount is. So there seems like there's two separate issues. Issue number one is what we've used fund balance from 21, 22 and put towards these projects. And then of that money that's been appropriated, how much has actually been spent? That's number one. And then number two is when you have fund balance surplus for 2023, what that actual amount is, and then what that's going to be spent.
That question I understand will be settled through the audit. My question on the first question was actually not how much of the funds within the fund balance that we already know how much is there were spent on projects that we allocated them to, but rather how much in that fund balance that we knew at some point how much there was has not been allocated to a project. Are there remaining funds in that fund balance that has been audited?
I mean, I guess if you look at, again, if you hang
It's
on.
all been allocated.
Yeah.
It's all been allocated.
But if you look
Okay,
at,
that's what we were trying to get clarity
Yeah,
on.
It's
you
just
look
whether or not it will have been spent is a different conversation. Not all of it's been allocated, but not all of it has been spent. As described, some of it is built into several year projects and some may have to be reevaluated if it can't be spent. I mean, fund balance is different than ARPA without the timeline, but the project scheme is similar.
If it's all been allocated, that answers my question. Thank you.
yeah, but wait, but I want to give as complete an explanation as possible. You look at slide 91 for fund balance, completed projects, completed, you have $8,745,000. Appropriated, obligated, spent, gone. Then in the next slide, you have almost $98 million appropriated. Spent so far, $56,373,249. Then obligated, which means it's attached to a contract but not yet spent, a little north of $28 million. And then that leaves only $7 million unspent. So if you're looking at what has been appropriated but not spent and not contractually tied to anything, there's roughly $7 million left.
Again, I was looking at dollars that had not been appropriated. It's over the last year and change that we've been discussing fund balance and the American Rescue Plan. The CAO we've repeatedly asked how much fund balance dollars there are, and we've always been in this waiting game of figuring it out. I think for future years, fund balance, it could be clearer in communicating, so that community residents and advocates can advocate for the needs that we have within that flexible funding. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. All right, and then last up, we'll go to sort of reports. And if anybody has any questions from the dais, we can get through those. Mr. Cooper? I just want to ask this question. I mean, and maybe I needed to do this in advance, but when we had DPW Councilmember Thomas's meeting, they said, we don't have enough people to do this. We can't do that. If you look at the staffing report, according to this, they have 81% of their positions filled. And 19% is not an insignificant number, but it is also not, we're crippled either. So I'm trying to balance where is the sweet spot of where they really ought to be in order to get their work done, because they've told us, and I realize again, Mr. Large, this isn't you, but they've told us two different things. A year ago, it was, we have enough people, we don't need salary increases, we're all good. And then this week, it's, we don't have enough people, we can't man trucks, we can't do the work because we don't have enough folks.
Well, I can tell you this, that I have been in communication recently with the director and deputy director of DPW, and we actually have a meeting scheduled on Monday to review their position. So I don't even, I know I would have had an answer had that been before.
Right.
But I can tell you they asked to meet with me so we can look at some issues. I don't know what they are because I don't come to the other meetings and follow that piece.
I know.
However, I do know that they are looking to resolve the matter. And we're gonna have a meeting on Monday, so they can probably report back to you after that meeting, and give an update. They may even be looking, I'm not sure what these vacancies are, but departments are, if it's a position that's been vacant, let's say 3 years, and you're continually trying to fill it, but you actually need this one, we can move those budget dollars to a new position. So some of that is also maybe new to them. They're both new in their roles. So we want to share that with them, but I don't have any, answers on their behalf.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, could you do me a favor after you meet with them on Monday, email the members of this committee, and I guess just email the entire council, because it matters to all of us. And I again, the money's there. We've been advocating. We just passed 13 different civil service motions today to raise pay across a number of different categories and annual leave. So I know the administration wants to be supportive of that. I realize Mr. Hathaway is new in his role. With all of that said, though, the clock is ticking extraordinarily loudly, and if they are under-resourced from a personnel perspective, we want to give them all the tools they need to be successful.
No problem. Yes, hopefully I find that out on Monday.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members.
And but can I wanted
Yeah,
to
absolutely,
respond to Councilmember Morel's question from earlier. I was able to pull my notes. You were correct about that funding. So whenever NORD approaches us, we'll put their ordinance through as well. We haven't received it from them.
Thank you, Council.
No problem.
All right, I guess, guys, is there anything that you all need to highlight for us, really? I mean, we look at these numbers all the time. The only major question I have is, it looks like on the personnel spending, there's a big surplus, but that's probably just the fact that it's so early in the
It's so early, and at that point in time, for personnel and even for, this is data from February. And so for personnel and for other operating, the accrual process was still going on. So it's completed now. So as we get newer reports, the numbers will be fleshed out a little bit more as well.
And then, Brandy, I guess the other question is, we were delayed in collecting property tax because the school board waited so long to decide their millage issue. Are we where we are in collecting as we ought to
I
be?
think I'm gonna let Matt
Add into that one, okay.
So actually, I do that number for you.
Oh, great.
As of today, of our $189.5 million forecast, we've collected $166.5 million.
That's good.
So 88% of our
That's good.
forecast.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And do we feel that the other roughly 22 is in process? And
I
it'll be-
think that's in line with where we were at this point last year, and so that rest of it will likely materialize throughout the rest of the year.
All right. Councilmember Green?
As well as we've done in terms of hiring, we still have like 330 full-time equivalent positions available. I don't have a answer to that. I just know that obviously when I see 15 project managers available, FEMA-funded positions and all, it causes concern. So this is a general, our departments maybe need to explain a little bit better what some of the impediments are to hiring in certain areas. Because I kind of hear certain stories that suggest that some people aren't hired and they thought that they were qualified for the position. But there's no doubt that there's a toll that having such vacancies plays in our city. You all may not have the answer, but somebody's watching this. The departments maybe need to be very proactive if they've had an opportunity, if they have an idea of why certain positions are available, to let the appropriate persons know what changes need to be made to fill them. When I see 15 FEMA project managers, I just kind of wonder, what's the impediment to hiring people in salary areas where the salary is $60,000, $70,000, you know? Again, I'm not expecting an answer today, but maybe.
I have a little bit of a response for you.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Mr. James Simmons is our recruiting supervisor, and he's been working closely with departments more so. And so when departments come to us for meetings, we're not leaving him out. For example, the meeting on Monday, he's going to be involved in that meeting with DPW because some of the challenges could be on the recruitment side, and he's going to be assisting with that. And so one thing that we're going to work on is looking at the vacancies, him and I, to see where we can come together to work with departments and see what those challenges are. Instead of departments just coming to him, which is what happens is when he first got here, it's like he's just reacting to, it's so much need for him, right? And his team at this time, but his team is getting better staffed up to allow them to do some of that piece and him to work on the higher part. So we are working on a plan together to try and at least see what those needs are. It could be budgetary, it could be something else, it could be job studies needed, but it could just simply be issues with getting people. One of the issues before he mentioned was like a management development analyst or a specialist would be posted in a generic posting and someone's applying for it, but we don't know what division or what area of the city is in. So he's already made steps. If you look at the website for civil service, he's already updated it. So you'll know if it's a city council position or if it's in the mayor's or what is purchasing. So the person applying has an idea to have a better way to attract people. And I know there's other tactics he's using to help as well. But one of the things we're trying to do now is when we meet with departments, when we use this list to see where they're outstanding, we want to have him involved to assist with that. So there's some plans we're doing right now.
I do then have a suggestion. Just in my district for example, there are 6 schools of higher education. Village, Suno, UNO, Delgado, even Baptist Theological Seminary. Some of those folks stay around. A better coordination of recruiting from the areas where adults who are interested in education may be willing to stay around and get educated in a specific area to help fill a job. So I do want to add that. I go to the universities a lot, and I even go to events, but I don't see, I think, enough city-specific department recruiting. And when we say that we have a job that might stay vacant for 2 or 3 years, it suggests that maybe an alternative is to, not an alternative, but an option is to train someone for that particular job to whatever extent is possible. And the training may not be us, but it may be referring them to the areas that they can get the training that is needed. The one thing that is good about our city is we kind of have a surprising number compared to some other cities our size of schools of higher education. As I mentioned, Delgado with its thousands of students, and the other universities, Holy Cross, I don't want to leave anybody out. Obviously, Tulane and Loyola, we certainly know about, but those other institutions that I mentioned, just think about that in the Monday meeting, how we can get to the point where if we see a position vacant for a while, we can maybe look at senior classes of students at schools of higher education and how we can fill those jobs. Because I know that we could be functioning a lot better as a city if we were able to fill more. We've done a good job because the number used to be much higher than 332. But 332 is a number that still suggests that there's opportunities for us to train some of those persons who are here in school before they leave to maybe fill those jobs down the line. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Councilman.
Councilman?
Yes,
I just have
sorry,
a couple of,
Mr. Cooper.
wanted to report a couple of macroeconomic statistics, just, doing my job here. Again, last month in March, inflation jumped up to 3.5% year over year. And, the GDP statistic were released this morning. We're at 1.6%. That's a fall from the previous quarter. Just to put that in context, let's say what cost $100 3 years ago now costs $120. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. Thank you, Mr. Lodge. We appreciate your being here, to the CEO, their team. All right, Councilmember Moreno has moved to adjourn. Let Councilmember Green second. JP got him. All right. Four yeas, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I'm gonna be ready for that next meeting. I was reading.